A scream tore through the canyon like a broken prayer, thin and desperate, lost to the endless red sky. Then came silence, the kind that follows when the world holds its breath after something cruel has passed. In that silence rode a man. His horse moved slow, each step stirring up ghosts of dust. The rider was tall and lean, a man whose face carried both sunburn and sorrow. 35, perhaps, though hardship had carved older stories into his skin. He'd seen enough of the West to know it did not forgive softness, yet his eyes, gray as rain that rarely came, still held a flicker of gentleness. He had been riding 3 days, searching for a stray colt that bolted during a thunderstorm. The desert stretched endless, color of rust and bone, and the sun burned like judgment. His canteen was half empty. His patience, too. But when he reached the mouth of a narrow gorge, something pulled at him, an instinct older than reason, the kind men once called faith. He reined in the horse and listened. Faintly, beneath the wind's whisper, came the sound of a sob. He dismounted, boots sinking in the hot sand, and followed it into shadow. The air cooled, the smell of damp stone rising around him. Inside the shallow cave, 2 figures huddled together, small and shaking. Children. Their skin was darkened by dust, their dresses torn, their eyes wide with hunger and fear. The older one, perhaps 7, shielded the younger, no more than 6, with an arm thin as a willow branch. They didn't move when he entered. Only watched, every muscle ready to run though there was nowhere left to go. He lowered his hat, crouched, and set down his canteen. No words. Just water between them, offered like peace. The younger girl's lips trembled. She looked to her sister, who finally reached forward, trembling fingers brushing the metal rim. 1 sip. Then, another. The man sat back on his heels, letting the quiet stretch long enough for their breathing to steady. He noticed bruises on their wrists, a tear at the hem where rope once bit through fabric. Someone had taken them, then lost them, or left them to die. He spoke softly, more to the air than to them. Said he'd not harm them. Said the storm had passed. The older girl frowned, not understanding the words but hearing their tone. She reached for her sister's hand again, eyes flicking toward the cave mouth where light poured in gold ribbons through the dust. He understood that look. Fear shaped like flight. He left them the canteen and stepped back outside. The sky above the canyon had turned copper, and the heat was thinning into the chill of dusk. He gathered fallen branches, built a small fire where its light would warm the cave without blinding its depths. Smoke curled upward, carrying the smell of sage and cedar. The girls crept closer by degrees, drawn by the warmth. He offered them half a biscuit from his saddlebag. The younger one took it, chewing slow, as if afraid it might vanish. The older kept her gaze fixed on him, mistrust carved deep behind her eyes. He admired her courage. Children born to such lands learned too early how fragile mercy could be. As night fell, coyotes began their mournful chorus beyond the dunes. He fed the fire, wrapped his duster tighter, and kept watch. The girls slept in fits, murmuring in a tongue he did not know. Each time one stirred, he murmured low, like a father soothing ghosts. When dawn broke, he found them awake, staring at him with cautious curiosity. He smiled, an awkward, gentle thing, and gestured toward his horse tied near the entrance. He pantomimed eating, riding, safety. They understood enough to follow when he led them to the stream nearby. He showed them how to cup water in their palms, how to wash dust from their hair. Days passed quietly. He built a lean shelter from brush, tended a small fire, and hunted rabbit for them to eat. The girls began to laugh, softly at first, like wind through tall grass. It was a sound that loosened something tight in his chest, a sound he hadn't heard since before his wife died 5 winters ago. By the 5th day, they no longer hid when he approached. The older one even mimicked his gestures, pointing at the sky when hawks circled, at the stars when dusk bled purple. He told them stories with his hands, and though they didn't share a language, something unspoken grew between them. Trust, fragile but real. Then, on the 6th morning, the world changed again. He was cleaning his rifle when the horse lifted its head, ears twitching. A sound drifted through the canyon, hoofbeats, distant but sure. He froze, listening. More than one rider. Moving fast. He looked toward the cave where the girls still slept, their faces peaceful beneath the flicker of dying firelight. He knew peace never lasted long in these lands. Some debts of mercy invited danger. The hoofbeats grew louder. Dust rose on the horizon, shimmering in the rising sun. He stood slowly, hat shadowing his eyes, hand resting on the rifle's worn stock. For the first time since he'd found them, fear returned, not for himself, but for the two small souls he'd sworn, without words, to protect. The riders appeared like a storm breaking from the earth, 3 figures against the rising light, their silhouettes sharp and swift as vengeance. The cowboy's pulse slowed to a measured rhythm. He'd seen that kind of charge before. Men who rode with purpose, women who rode with reason deeper still. Dust curled around them, gold and red, until the first rider pulled hard on the reins, her horse rearing in a cloud of breath and sand. The girls stirred at the echo, then bolted from the cave, their cries splitting the silence. He turned and saw them running. Not away, but toward the riders. Their small feet kicked up dust as they shouted words he could not understand. The woman leading the group dismounted before her horse had even stilled. She dropped to her knees, arms open, gathering the children into her embrace with a sob that sounded too big for one heart to hold. He stepped back, suddenly feeling like an intruder in a sacred moment. The woman's face was streaked with travel and grief, but her eyes, dark as riverbed silt, glowed with life again. The younger girl pressed her cheek against her mother's chest, whispering through tears, while the elder clung tight to her waist, unwilling to let go. The cowboy turned away, giving them the dignity of their reunion. The desert stretched wide, indifferent as always. The wind carried whispers, half-words of gratitude and pain. He understood none of it, yet it filled him like prayer. When he faced them again, the woman was already standing, tall and silent, her daughters behind her. She looked at him, not as stranger nor savior, but as something between. Gratitude softened her expression, but grief still lived beneath it. She stepped forward, hand resting lightly over her heart, and spoke in broken English. Her voice carried the rhythm of distance and loss. She told him soldiers had burned their camp. Her husband gone. The tribe scattered north. Only the children escaped, lost among the stones until his kindness found them. He said nothing. Words seemed clumsy in the shadow of her truth. Instead, he nodded once, eyes low, as if accepting a weight he had not asked to bear but would not set down. The woman studied him for a long moment. Then she reached into a leather pouch at her side and drew out a small carved amulet, turquoise set in bone, threaded with red sinew. She lifted it between them, the desert wind tugging gently at the string. Her voice trembled, but her gaze held steady. "This is a bond," she said, "between your spirit and theirs." He hesitated. She pressed the amulet into his palm. My people believe when a man saves a life, he must walk beside it, even when paths divide. You are bound now. To them. To me. The words caught him off guard. He wasn't a man given to belief anymore. Once, long ago, before war and loneliness had scoured him clean, he'd trusted in something greater. But years had turned that faith into silence. Still, he closed his hand around the token. It was warm, almost alive. The girls stepped forward, eyes shining with shy smiles. The older one offered him a feather, black and white, plucked from her hair. The younger pressed her tiny palm to his wrist, leaving a smudge of red dust there. A child's mark of farewell. He crouched, meeting them at eye level. His voice was soft when he spoke, careful, reverent. He told them to stay close to their mother, to grow strong, to laugh when they could. They didn't understand the words, but they understood the tone. The older girl nodded, solemn as a promise. The woman mounted her horse. The children climbed up behind her, their small hands gripping her waist. She looked down once more at the cowboy, her face calm now, though shadows of sorrow still lingered. "You walk with honor," she said quietly. Then, with a gentle pull on the reins, she turned toward the horizon. He watched them go until they became a blur swallowed by distance. The wind shifted, carrying away the sound of hooves. Only the echo of their laughter remained, faint and bright, dissolving into the great empty silence. When he looked down, the amulet gleamed in his hand, light pooling in its crevices. He tied it around his neck, feeling its weight settle against his chest like truth. The breeze touched his face, cool and strange, as though the land itself had taken notice. He turned toward his fire, but the flames had burned low, only embers left, red, stubborn, refusing to die. He fed it one last branch, watching sparks rise and vanish into the blue. For the first time in years, his heart ached not from loss, but from something gentler. Something new. Then, just as he turned to pack his gear, the horse lifted its head again, ears pricked. A single rider was cresting the ridge, the shape small, deliberate, and alone. The sun caught on a flash of turquoise at her throat. The wind fell still. He stood frozen, one hand on the amulet. Somewhere deep in his chest, that old wordless prayer began again.